The 2026 Minnesota Vikings offseason is here. Vikings finished the 25 season on a 5-game win streak and are literally a better kick return defense from winning the NFC North. That's how crazy this past season was. But we're going to talk a little bit about it to kind of wrap it up. And then we're going to give you a nice little primer for the 2025 offseason, including the first mock draft of the Minnesota Vikings draft cycle. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top left corner is producer Dave. And the 2025 Minnesota Vikings season is complete. They finished with a 9-8 record. And, well, we have way more questions than we have answers, and we're going to kind of start having that conversation today. Daniel's already saying we're going to get Burrow. Who knows if Burrow is actually going to be on the market? My guess is no. And reason being, just those comments that came from Burrow were strictly out of frustration, and nobody could blame him. But they're keeping Zach Taylor. They're keeping Duke Tobin, the general manager. And to me, that says we're going to run it back one more time. And then if that doesn't work, I think at that point, Burrow might be on the market.
If it's broke, why fix it?
Yeah. It's and the one thing that if you're the Bengals that you can talk yourself into is, oh, Burrow was hurt half the year. If he plays all next year, he was playing an MVP level, so he should be fine. So we'll find out. Freddie's talking about getting Lamar Jackson. But the real crux of the discussion is all about JJ McCarthy. And let's start by having that conversation. And don't forget, we are going to get into that mock draft later on in the show. So you are not going to want to dip out. You're going to want to stick around. And McCarthy played the game on Sunday and then left in the third quarter with his broken hand. Some interesting differences in the process of taking McCarthy out. Kevin O'Connell alluded to the fact that, we had a plan. We had multiple people checking in on him. And then McCarthy just says in his post-game press conference, no, it was my decision. When I had come out, I had to make the call. So very funny from that perspective. But McCarthy comes out with that broken hand. And we talked about it going in. When you have a broken hand, it's mainly going to be, okay, the first question is, can you make it worse if you play? If the answer is yes, the Vikings probably don't play him. But it's going to be about, can you deal with the pain? And can you actually grip and throw a football? And until McCarthy came out, he could do both of those things. And when he couldn't, he took himself out of the game. The one thing that really stood out to me about his performance was the fact that his ball placement was bad. It was all over the place.
On some throws. And then some throws, they were dead on.
I mean, sure, but it's still bad if you have some throws that are bad. I'm not saying that he was bad every single time. At an overall level, it was bad. And to me, the big question is, how much of that had to do with the hand? I don't know that answer. I can't tell you for certain that the hand has a factor, but I can tell you that the same issues that have persisted him all season long, where the ball sprays everywhere, were persistent in this game. So to me, that's going to be the number one thing that I'm going to look at next offseason is, what does JJ McCarthy look like when it comes to his ball placement? How do his mechanics look? Because we might be able to write it off a little bit in this game because he was dealing with a broken right hand, but I don't know how much that is a factor. So I'm not going to criticize him for it. I'm not going to give him a pass for it. I'm just going to kind of leave it open-ended because it could really go either way, because grip of the football overall is a difficult thing when you have a broken hand. but how much of that grip factor was impacting his ball placement. To me, my vibe is it wasn't. But that's kind of why I'm leaving it open-ended, because I really don't know. None of us can know unless we actually have the conversation with McCarthy, and where he'll say, yeah, it was spraying because I couldn't get the proper grip on the ball and I was losing points of pressure. And when you lose points of pressure, hey, maybe if you're losing a point of pressure down here because that's where the break is, then the ball maybe just gets pointed upward a little bit. Troy Aikman mentioned that, I think, in week 1. Tom Brady mentioned it in like week 5 I think it was against the Eagles. Those little details can have a major impact, but it was a problem all year. And to me, that's going to be the number one thing going into next year. His decision-making really wasn't that bad overall. It improved from week 1 till the end of the season, because he got better at processing, because he got more adjusted and acclimated to the speed of the game. I'm not worried about the mental process of how he makes decisions. I'm worried about once he actually fires, when he pulls the trigger on something, can he get it there in the proper spot? Can he throw with good enough accuracy? Because accuracy is relative. There is throwing within the window of a receiver, which we've seen Justin Jefferson. Oh, you throw it in my radius, I will go catch it. That happened way too many times where Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson could not bring it in. We saw that against the New York Giants a few times, where a couple of them were to Jalen Naylor, where, hey, we talked about it, where he was turned around, hits the back shoulder, interception, hits the hands when he has to reach up for it on a crossing route. It becomes an interception, but gets called back due to a neutral zone infraction. Justin Jefferson on an out route has to extend all the way out. He can't bring it in. Like, those are inaccurate passes, but they're like within the range. So theoretically, yeah, you're a receiver, you're paid to catch footballs, you should still be able to bring them in. But that's where the conversation comes about, do you throw a catchable football? Where if you had Kirk Cousins, and we criticize Kirk Cousins plenty on the show, but Kirk Cousins would give you a much cleaner football. It would be in the proper spot more often than not, and his issues would come in other areas. So McCarthy needs to work on developing that chemistry, throwing a more catchable football, and getting that accuracy tuned to where he is doing it with more consistency. Because you're right, Dave, there were some good throws with good accuracy. Even guys like Anthony Richardson will just be like, whoa, like just pinpoint throw. But the key is not, can you do it? It's how often can you replicate it? And all these guys, one of my favorite stories, I guess it's not a story, but it's kind of an idea. Brian Scalabrine, if you follow basketball, he was like the 12th guy on those Celtics teams with KG, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen. Like a super jag when it comes to the NBA. That guy shows up at the Y, he's beating your ass 21-0 in one-on-one. He's going to destroy you because he's so much better than literally everybody else on the planet. But in the NBA, he's average. He's maybe below average. And all these quarterbacks can do all the things I'm talking about. You can replicate that in practice. You can throw, I can throw that slant. I can throw that post. I can throw that dig, that out. But once you get into the game, how often can you do it? And can you replicate it with 300-pound guys trying to kill you? Those are the little details that separate a guy like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen to a guy like Jamarcus Russell or the current version of JJ McCarthy. Can you take that next step and become that player that can replicate and be consistent? For me, that's number one. And number two, can you find a way to stay healthy? I don't think he's injury prone, but he makes himself prone to injury because of how he plays. We've talked about that before. Those, to me, are the two most important things. And the fact that he's not going into this offseason with a injury that he has to rehab, unless for some reason they say, hey, now he has to have surgery. That is huge because now he can work on those mechanics. February and March is like, work on things to fix. And then April, you're going back, you're working out, you're getting into team meetings, then you're getting into practice. The real time to make those big changes is February and March. He'll be able to do that where last year he couldn't because he was rehabbing a knee injury. That is, to me, going to be the biggest factor as far as him moving forward. I don't know if he's the franchise quarterback. Nobody knows that he's the franchise quarterback. Everybody will look at different things about what he's put on tape in the first 10 games that he's played, and they will tell you different things. Some people will be like, look at these flashes. He's without a doubt the franchise quarterback. Some people look at the constant misses and be like, there's no way this guy's a franchise quarterback. He's terrible. The reality is somewhere in the middle right now. He's shown flashes where he can be the guy, but he's shown zero consistency that has you believe without a shadow of a doubt that he is. And what side of the scale is he going to tip on when 2026 comes around? That's the answer we're all looking for. And that's why we're going into this offseason with such frustration, because not knowing after 2 years really sucks. It's terrible. There is no redeeming quality about it. But you still have some hope that he can get there. And it's why there's been so many discussions about, hey, are we going to bring in another quarterback to compete? Are we going to bring in another capable quarterback? Is there going to be a quarterback that takes over for him? My bold prediction is that the Vikings are going to end up with Anthony Richardson because of the connection with Kevin O'Connell, because of the super high upside, and the Colts are probably ready to dump him. I'm not going to tell you that that's going to be your franchise quarterback of the future. I'm not going to tell you that he's going to be this cure-all. Actually, he presents a lot of the same problems J.J. McCarthy does, just in a different package. He's consistently inaccurate. He does not have good placement. He's got all the tools to succeed, but he doesn't. And he's prone to injury. With his latest one being one of the biggest freak accidents I've ever heard in the NFL, a resistance band came off of like a doorknob and whacked him and broke his face. It broke his eye socket. That's just one of the wilder injuries I've heard in a long time. But he's prone to injury because he's had the shoulder, he's had concussions. Like he presents basically JJ McCarthy, but a different package. But we all know that Kevin O'Connell loves him. There's that NFL Films clip from when the Vikings played the Colts last year, and they had that embrace. And I had multiple sources on it in real time that the Vikings had an offer with the Cardinals to go to number 3 overall and take Richardson. But it didn't manifest for a couple of different reasons. One, the Cardinals didn't want to go back that far. And 2, I was told they wanted a 3rd second-round pick instead of 3 firsts and 2 seconds, which they wanted Paris Johnson Jr. and they wanted to move back and get a bunch of capital and then use some of that to move back up and go get him. Where theoretically, okay, you're moving from 3 to 6. How much capital are you going to get if you do that kind of swap? And they were very happy with what they got, and I don't blame them. So looking at all of those factors, Richardson to me feels like the guy who's going to come in. I also wouldn't be shocked if they bring in a 3rd guy and be like, all right, battle it out. Who's going to be the quarterback of the Vikings? Because you can't run back what you ran back this year. You can't do it again. If McCarthy takes that big step, you're not doing it again. It's a different process. But you have to have a fail-safe. You have to have a contingency plan. Because if this regime does not, they're fired. It's one thing to go into this year, and people were arguing with me. So, one guy, his name was Jeff, he was arguing with me on Twitter that just putting McCarthy out there was failing him. And I don't really see how you can argue that putting him out there with arguably the best situation a quarterback has ever had as a first-year starter is failing him. But there was a lot of frustration like with the Darnold stuff. And then Daniel Jones obviously had a renaissance year with the Colts that they didn't bring those guys in. They made real offers, significant offers. The Jones contract had more guaranteed money than the Colts offered, but they wanted more opportunity to play. And they always knew with McCarthy behind, they were never going to get that. They were never going to have like, hey, you're the guy. We're moving on with you. There's always going to be that little, like that devil on your shoulder, just waiting for you to screw up, waiting for you to have that 2 interception game so you can get benched. And that's when you're a guy trying to resurrect your career, or in Darnold's case, continue the resurrection that happened in 24. That's not really a healthy thing to play with. And when you have an opportunity to go somewhere where you don't have to deal with it, yeah, you take it and you run. You don't worry about it. It's the whole situation right now for the Vikings is a tough one because you just want to know that you have a franchise quarterback. And right now, the Vikings don't. They don't have a franchise quarterback. McCarthy could become one. And we all hope that's the case. That's best case scenario. But right now, he's not. And he's just a guy. He's a guy who's taken advantage of a couple really bad defenses, and he deserves credit for it. But there's no consistency. There's Like when you look at the underlying metrics over the course of his 10 starts, they're terrible. When you look at the offense's numbers, it's the worst offense per EPA per play via True Media since they started collecting EPA per play data in 2000. There's a lot that has to change. And we're going to find out what that looks like. And Dave and I might be doing a couple like breaking news shows over the course of the next couple weeks based on Brian Flores, based on, hey, maybe Wes Phillips and Josh McCown and Matt Daniels get fired. We're going to be ready. And this is why I'm higher on Cooper than you are. And but I also think that your rationale for not liking Cooper is completely valid. It's an interesting conversation point that I'm sure we'll dive into here at either if he stays or if he goes. But this is why we always say like, subscribe, and ring the bell for those notifications, because when Dave and I go live, it'll take us about a half hour where I get him a quick write-up, he whips up a graphic, we schedule it, and we go. So when that breaking news happens, you're going to want to keep tabs with us. And also, SKOL Search episodes, they're coming. Dave has 6 clips ready to go, and it's just all about getting those edited. We didn't want to release them until after the season was done because it's better to keep tabs on the season during the season. And then once off season comes, hey, it's draft time, baby. It's free agency.
First one will be out Wednesday morning.
There we go. And
the members get 12 hours of early access. So if you want that early access, that's going to be the way to go. Any tier. The tiers are basically there. Hey, you want to support us. We appreciate you. This is our way of giving back. You're going to get 12 hours. And then shortly after, each player will individually go up on podcast feeds. I don't know the when. Dave handles all that, and I have complete faith in him. But get prepared. There's going to be a lot coming. I already have 8 scouting reports done. I'm about to get my 9th done either tonight or tomorrow, and I'm going to get those recorded. We've got the first episode of SKOL Search is going to be Caleb Downs, Mansour Delane, and Jermod McCoy. Then we're going to get into running backs. You're going to hear my thoughts about Jeremiah Love, Jonah Coleman. Your first overall pick in 2026 draft for the Vikings.
And Katrin Allen at running back. So one of those 6 players is the first member of the All Forno team. One of those 6. So get ready, get excited, and we are going to have a lot more SKOL searches coming up. Every scouting report is going to be on video. No written this year, just video. I hate writing those things. And it gives you guys more content, more stuff to watch. Price might not make it to round 3, but I'm going to get to him. The next batch is going to be wide receivers. I'm doing positions like 3 at a time. So it gives me a little bit of time to breathe for each group so I don't get burnt out on watching one position. And then it gives you some variety. So the third group is going to be wide receivers, who the Vikings probably won't take in round 1. But it's good to know because you never know if Addison gets traded. You never know, hey, if Jalen Naylor goes and the best player available is a wide receiver, maybe they just take it because they're like, hey, there's nobody else really worth their this value. So let's just take the best available guy. Maybe that's a receiver. So we're going to look at everything. We're going to look at quarterbacks too, just because, hey, nothing is ever certain when it comes to the NFL draft. You never know when there's a Laramie Tunsil gas mask. You just never know. So we're going to look at everything. Before we kind of dive into the NFL draft stuff, I do want to talk a little bit about Dallas Turner. Turner's been great. He has improved significantly over the course of the season. We talked a lot about him. I was very critical of the Turner pick in real time. He was my 4th edge rusher. I didn't love him. Everybody knows how much I loved Chop Robinson. And I still love Chop Robinson. But the one thing, sometimes when you watch these guys and when you watch so many players, I don't like making excuses. And I promise this isn't an excuse, but sometimes I just don't have the bandwidth to watch like 6 games for every player and then watch 200 players, because scouting for the NFL draft is not my full-time job. It is a part of it. I also cover 2 beats, the Vikings and the Gators. I don't have time to dive in as much as a guy like Dane Brugler, Daniel Jeremiah. And you know what? That's okay. So when I watched Dallas Turner initially, I didn't see a game where he dropped into coverage
And he was running with running backs, and he was doing a lot of these things that really appealed to the Vikings because the games I watched didn't showcase that. So I missed it. And that was a good learning point for me, because if I would have seen that stuff, I would have been a little bit more bullish on the Turner pick when it happened. And I would have been way more understanding of that pick, because when I watched him, I'm like, is this guy actually good? Because basically all he does is a long arm and a bull rush. He doesn't really scream, this guy's a first round pick kind of thing, But I ended up being a little wrong on that. I had him as a high second round grade, and I'm okay with the grade I gave him. But overall, I wish I would have seen him running with running backs and stuff and doing the coverage stuff, because he's been really good when the Vikings have asked him to drop into coverage. He did so about 90 times this year, which in essence is like pretty remarkable for an edge rusher. And Turner, over the last few weeks, like, he grew so much as a baseline player over the course of his tenure with the Vikings, where his strength profile bulked up. He was able to hold up at the point of attack. He would still get washed out by like really good tackles. Tight ends weren't doing it to him. And he did a really good job of getting inside and using his speed and power to navigate through offensive lines. And I think his growth is something that you should be really excited about. He was the first Viking since 2017 to have 2 games with 2 sacks and a strip sack. He was the first Viking since 2011 and Jared Allen to have 4 strip sacks in the season. He finished with 8 sacks, 42 pressures, and 288 pass rush reps. Almost 15% of his pass rush reps ended in a pressure. Pretty impressive numbers for second-year guy.
PFF had him at 9 sacks.
Okay, so the way PFF does sacks, they credit a guy with sacks. And this is why I don't use PFF sack numbers. If it's a half, they credit one guy. They don't credit the other. So my understanding is that the 2 half sacks Turner got, they both got credited to him. So it's 9 instead of 8. So I always use Pro Football Reference for the sack number, because I feel like it gives you a little bit more of an understanding about that. But he was credited with the 9 sacks per PFF, which I understand their thought process. I don't like that personally. That's just a personal preference. No, there's nothing wrong with their process. It's just how I prefer it. So what Turner was able to do, and Alec Lewis brought it up a few weeks ago, where he's like, Turner's really dominating against these backup tackles, and he wasn't flashing. Like, the game he was talking about was the Washington Commanders game. And my understanding with kind of watching that film back was that was a game plan thing. That's why Turner didn't play a lot, because they had a specific game plan in mind. And they did that a lot in 2024 when Turner was a rookie. Sometimes he'd get like 3 to 9 snaps because it was a game plan specific, where they didn't use him in a role because they were trying to do different things and they had different packages for the offense that they were playing. So to me, I was never really worried about it. You should whip ass against really, bad tackles. But I also thought when he faced Lane Johnson in that Eagles game, he was pretty good. He was holding up at the point of attack. They were doing a lot of contain rushing, which objectively looks like you're not doing anything, because you're just supposed to be able to hold up your guy. And then if Jalen Hurts runs around, you shed and you go after him. But you want to contain him in the pocket. You don't want him to be able to scramble. That's the whole idea of a contain rush. And Turner, his get off on the ball is tremendous. He needs to develop a couple counter moves. He's got that speed to power. He's got the long arm. Develop the club rip, where you hit the hands down, and then it almost looks like you're holding, where they almost like look like they're doing a bicep curl, and the arm goes around the neck. That's not a hold in the NFL, because that's a defender intentionally trying to utilize leverage against you. So the NFL is not supposed to call that a hold, even though it looks really bad. Turner developed his ghost move, which he got a sack against the Chicago Bears last year on, where it looks like you're going to do a move and then you just dip your shoulder and you just go around and bend the arc. Those kind of things are going to help Turner separate. Von Miller talked about it on a podcast. I don't know if it was his or somebody else's, but he said everybody looks at like the cool move, the one that you like just explode around, the ghost move, a club rip or something. 95% of your production is going to come from being faster or stronger than the guy in front of you. And technique has very little to do with it. So Turner being able to grow that strength profile, being able to grow with his athleticism and kind of piece it all together is going to help elevate him to another level. And we're already seeing it in front of our eyes. To me, that is the most exciting thing when he's piecing it all together. Because remember, a lot of people are critical of the pick because they gave up a lot to get him. They gave up a fifth and then future third and fourth to move up from 23 to 17. But a lot of people are still including the move up from 42 to 23, which to me, I don't agree with at all. They're two separate moves. They weren't. The first move was not made so they could go get Dallas Turner. It was made to give them insurance to get a quarterback. And that move in itself, you can criticize it because, hey, they probably should have read the market better and they didn't have to do that. But once they moved up from 23 to 17, that first trade just kind of becomes a sunk cost because, well, we're already here and now we want to go get the guy that we love. And was that the right move? I'll let you be the judge of that. Turner right now is improving significantly. And with a really good offseason, like we could look at Turner as being like a 12 sack guy next year. I don't think that's out of the question because of how well he played in a versatile role this year. Because sometimes he was playing Andrew Van Ginkel's role. Sometimes he was playing Greenard. Sometimes he was just doing his own thing. And if Brian Flores ends up returning, which I hope so, he continues to be linked to the Raiders, which I think has a lot of merit. And I'll explain why in a minute. The idea being that you can continue to have that continuity. And now Brian Flores can have three guys he can really trust in all phases. Line those guys up in the A-gap. Line those guys up together on the outside. Stack them. Do some crazy stuff. Evolve the scheme that way. I want to see it. I think Turner can be a huge asset to you, both short and long term. Now, will they be able to kind of utilize some of that stuff? We'll find out. But I'm very excited about a lot of these different elements for the Minnesota Vikings. And it's going to be really, really fun to watch over the course of the next couple of years to see Turner continue to grow and develop. Because at this rate, Turner could be an elite edge rusher in 2 years. It could be one next year. And I wouldn't be surprised because of the growth he showed from year 1 to year 2. He turns 23 on Groundhog Day. He's not 23 yet. And that kind of youth is so big when it comes to development because Jared Verse came in the league at 24. Grown-ass man. He had grown-ass man strength. Dallas Turner is not going to ever be that kind of strong because they're just different players. And we talked about it like Dave, like with Army training, when Audrey Carter came in. There's Army training, which is all about endurance, and there's NFL, like football training, which is about being able to be explosive in short spurts. Not about endurance. And they're incredibly counterproductive. So with Turner needing to be that athlete to do stuff in space, he'll never be the strength that Verse is. But if he was at 24 coming out, we'd be looking at a completely different player than we saw coming out of the NFL draft at 21 because he would have 3 more years of seasoning with his body and his technique. And I think that sometimes that gets lost in translation a little bit. When Turner is 24, there's a good chance at this rate that he is better than what Jared Verse was as a rookie. And if that's the case, Vikings are in great shape. Because we also have to remember Verse was not a player that they were going to target because he did not fit how Brian Flores wanted to play defense. Is that the right process? We can debate that as well. But it'll be interesting to kind of see how that develops. I want to address this because I think it's interesting. JJ McCarthy, B1N, I think is what it is, says Kirk Cousins is coming back. He is the only perfect fit available for cheap. Even Kirk haters like Mackie and Judd are saying Kirk is coming back. I mean, if Kirk is fine being, hey, you're going to be the backup, and if you have to play, you just know the offense and you know the guys, so it'll be a seamless fit. Give him the minimum. I'm fine with that. I did not want it going into this past year because I wanted McCarthy to be free to not have to look over his shoulder at Kirky boy. But I think Kirk has proven that he's not a franchise starter anymore. He's like a top 5 backup now at this point in his career, which I think is just fine. That's the kind of guy I would want on my team, especially in the situation the Vikings are in, where if Kirk needs to play, you could trust him to win 3 out of 5 games. You trust him to win 4 out of 6 because he's got that experience and he knows the offense and he knows the team. It's one of the reasons why we love the Adam Thielen trade, because, he already knows the offense. He can come in and doesn't have to learn anything. It's just all about building chemistry. You don't have to worry about him learning. I've never played in a KOC offense before. Yeah, well, he had. So this offseason is going to be interesting for a multitude of factors. Last thing before we go to the mock draft, though. Brian Flores being linked to the Raiders, Dave. Peter Schrager talked about it on First Take today, and I think it works for one reason. The Raiders are...
Schrager isn't the only one that's talked about it.
I know. The Raiders are the punk rockers of the NFL. They're okay with counterculture. They're okay with going against the grain in the league, and they've sued the league before. Al Davis has never been afraid to be different. And Mark Davis, his son, who now owns the team, is kind of the same thing. And Tom Brady being the minority owner now, he's got a long-standing relationship with Brian Flores. They won multiple Super Bowls together. It would not shock me if they're like, all right, Flores, here you go. Here are the keys. I know you, you know me. We're going to help each other try and win a Super Bowl here.
And it was announced Brady's going to be part of the head coach selection group.
It would not be shocking to see that end up happening. But the one thing that I don't have an answer on yet is how the Vikings would, if they would get a compensatory pick.
Yes.
Two of them would. For Brian Flores. They would if the contract expires.
Yes, they would. I've verified that. They would. As long as there's not a gap. As long as B-Flow doesn't take the year off or whatever. They would get it.
Okay, where did you find that? Because I want to put that in a piece. You'll have to send that to me later, because I looked at the operations manual and there was nothing concrete about it. So send that to me later, and I'll get that squared away. But it's fascinating that if Flores takes that job, what that'll look like for the Vikings, and if that's the case, we'll break down some coordinator candidates. I'll have friend of the show and coaching aficionado AJ Schulte to kind of talk about that, and we'll break it down. Chris says we need at least one FCS player from Forno in the draft. Well, Kwesi doesn't take FCS players. He's only taken one. So I wouldn't necessarily expect that, but we'll talk about that. And I think it's time to give the people what they want, Dave. They came here for a mock draft. We talked about McCarthy. We talked about Flores. We talked about Turner. Now it's time for a mock.
Okay. Let me find the buttons. It's been so long. Are you ready?
Perfect. Yes.
Welcome to Vikings First and SKOL's Mock Draft Mondays. Who will the Vikings pick? And who's your favorite choice? And those were last year's graphics, as we all know. And give me a second while I bring everything in, because I knew this would happen. Let me move some windows out of the way so I can access it. Here we go. First, we get Tyler.
So while you do that, Dave, I want to kind of explain a couple things, because when you pull up the PFF mock draft simulator, which is what we're going to use, I missed the old Draft Network one, but the new one just doesn't hit the same. So with the PFF simulator that you can see in this top box, the tough part is these remaining picks. And when I go to hit trade, I've already made a couple trades, and I want to at least explain that. I'm making trades specifically to give the Vikings the picks that they're supposed to have. If you go to the Vikings website, that they had it as they have 18, 49, 82, 97. Then they have the Eagles 5th, the Colts 6th, the Vikings own 7th, and the 7th's from the Panthers and the Texans. Now, this 97th overall pick is due to the fact that they're expected to get a compensatory pick for Sam Darnold. I'm going to pull up over the cap because I don't believe they're expected to get another compensatory pick because they played Eric Wilson. We can talk about, Eric Wilson probably shouldn't have played him. Yeah, they shouldn't have played him, but Eric Wilson was also really good at football, and the Vikings were close to winning division. So that's a fair price to pay.
Right now, to bring Eric Wilson back because he set some records.
Yeah, he was very good this year, but to me, it's all about the right price. What does that price look like? And I'm not 100% sure what you do, but it's all about what that price is. I would give him like a 2-year, $8 million deal, and that's about it. Just because he's like 30 something. He's 31 or 32. He's in his 9th year. If Brian Flores doesn't come back, I don't want him back because he's going to cost too much money for somebody. And that's not to say he's not going to be good, but it's just tough to see a player at that age with a career year replicate it. So to me, I would be like, I'm good. But I wouldn't be shocked if we see somebody end up paying him a lot of money. And he would have earned it. I just don't think the Vikings should give it to him. All right. Let's have a conversation here. Take a look at some of the top picks. Dante Moore and Fernando Mendoza are probably going 1-2. Arvell Reese would shock me if he doesn't go like 3rd or 4th overall. Ruben Bain, there's going to be a lot of discussion about his arm length, but he plays so powerful, and he's the one thing that could deter people from wanting to take him is he doesn't have a lot of bend, doesn't have a lot of agility is not the right word, but he's stiff in his lower half, and he's not going to bend to the arc really, really well. Where
What's
like
his
you see,
length?
It's like sub 31 inches. It might be sub 30.
Wow.
They're very short, but he's got so much raw power to where how much will that matter? It's going to depend on who you ask and how they want to play him. Especially because if you go in with a 4 or 5 inch arm length deficiency, you can just get stood up. But if you get inside and get into somebody's chest, it's not going to matter. So that's going to be a really difficult one because historically short arm edge rushers don't have that much success. Even Elvis Dumerville, who was 5'10", but he weighed like 260. He had 32-inch arms. So his evaluation will be interesting because his dominance on the field is evident. But will teams want to deal with the arm length issue? Only time will tell. But Caleb Downs is gone. Sonny Styles, who I think everybody probably knows at this point, I love Sonny Styles. I would love to have him, but I think the Vikings are probably too far down. Peter Woods would be another pick. Jermod McCoy, who you'll see on Wednesday's SKOL Search. Caleb Banks, I love Caleb Banks, but he's 335 pounds and he suffered a pretty bad foot injury. Foot injuries in big humans are bad, especially because there's not always a lot of blood flow to the foot, especially if it ends up being like a Jones fracture, which is like that midfoot area. Keldrick Falk, if you want to have a guy who can be like inside outside versatile, kind of like what Tyrion Ingram Dawkins is, but he weighs like 285. If you wanted for some reason, if you want a Brian O'Neill replacement, which I highly doubt, Spencer Fano, Francis Mauigoa, who probably is going to kick inside at the next level because of what his best abilities are. He's just a rock solid player. But let's take a look at who's available for the Vikings. Mansour Delane, you'll also see on Wednesday's SKOL Search. I loved him at Delane. He was at Virginia Tech. Then he came to LSU this past year. His tape against Clemson is must watch. That was week 1. He didn't have a better game than the Clemson game, but he was so good. He had 8 targets, only allowed 1 catch for like 7 yards. And it was a quick slant. It wasn't even that they were attacking. They were attacking him downfield. He was just whipping ass. So I would high recommend that. Avion Terrell, he's AJ Terrell's little brother, plays very similar. But if you look at him, he's not exactly big. He's 5'11", 180. Now, the Vikings have never shied away from a small cornerback, but he's got the chops to play on the outside. You don't have to kick him inside into the slot. Whereas if you look at Mansour Delane's bigger, 6', 190. And 10 pounds doesn't feel like a lot, but you ask any boxing fan, 10 pounds feels like an eternity. Like, it is a significant difference when you're playing that corner position. Fano, I don't think offensive, like, I would be shocked if the Vikings took an offensive lineman in their first 3 picks. I'd be shocked. based on how the roster is right now. Because I think personally they're going to extend O'Neal and cut that $23 million cap hit down to like $5 or $6 million, because it's the last year of his deal. They can extend him and make it very reasonable. And with Rob Brzezinski's,
one of the ways they're probably going to get under being under the cap.
And with Rob Brzezinski's contract style, those first 2 years will be like $5 million, $7 million, and then it'll spike to like 15 or 20. Because that's kind of how he structures things. Denzel Boston, you'll see him in the 3rd episode of SKOL Search. I love him. He's a traditional X receiver. His dad was David Boston, former Cardinals receiver, and one of the biggest free agency busts in NFL history when he went to the Chargers. I love his game, but he's not the most fluid route runner. He's a traditional X, but he has some of the best ball tracking, ball skills, and body control I've seen in a prospect in a long time. He just jumps up and he grabs it out of midair and nobody can touch him. It's crazy. So if like maybe Addison gets traded, that's going to be an option. Caden McDonald, nose tackle. I don't know what the Vikings will do. They obviously decided, hey, we're not going to punt the run, but we're going to punt nose tackle and go with the Jalen Redmond, Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave approach. To a point it worked, and to a point it didn't. It got better once you had like Eric Wilson and Blake Cashman really settling in on like the back end of the year. Like the run defense wasn't that bad. And especially because the pass defense was so good that teams were just defaulting more to the run and they were trying to pound the rock because that was where the weakness was. Last year, they were so good at the run defense that the pass numbers looked bad. So it's kind of Flores and them decided we're going to pick our poison. The poison is going to be stopping the pass. And you can argue for the most part it worked. They were constantly in games and only had a couple outings where it was just like, okay, you guys just sucked today. And there needs to be a lot of improvement, a lot of youth movement on defense, but will it be nose tackle? I'm not convinced, but I wasn't convinced they would trade Harrison Phillips either. So who knows? Vega Ione, I'm not sure I pronounced that right. Offensive guard from Penn State will go high. Romello Height, this dude, he is listed at 240. He weighs like 225. I'm not convinced he's an edge rusher. Somebody asked in the chat about Kenyon Sadiq. He's right here. Caden Proctor can't move. Dave, I think if you played left tackle at Alabama, that you could move better than Caden Proctor right now.
Well, and we saw Alabama get humiliated in the playoff.
Shout out Fernando Mendoza, Kurt Signetti, and the Indiana Hoosiers. Literally the worst football program in the history of FBS football. Beat the living piss out of Alabama. That is why college football rules. And I wrote about it for A to Z Sports that it was the most important game in recent memory. So, looking at it, CJ Allen's going to be one to watch, linebacker. He's probably going to go round 1, just like Sonny Styles. But I think Styles will go higher than the Vikings pick. But if they want linebacker, I think it'll be Allen. Looking at the board and how it sits right now, I think Mansour Delane would be the pick. We're going to do a lot of these mock drafts. We're going to look at them from a chaos standpoint. We're going to look at them from a realism standpoint. We're going to look at them from, hey, what would I do?
A round belly standpoint.
Yep. We're going to look at it from all kinds of standpoints because that's what mock drafts are. It's to explore scenarios. And if this happens, which we'll take Delane right here at 18th overall, what happens when you get to 49? What are you going to take? And that process of looking at it from multiple perspectives is going to help us get a sense of what will the Vikings end up doing come April. So move down here. I like Chris Johnson a lot from San Diego State. Really, really good player. This year, only 18 receptions on 43 targets for 185 yards allowed and 4 interceptions. But he also played at San Diego State. So there's a little bit of a tax there. He's not exactly playing the best level of competition. They did beat the living piss out of Jaren Kiwa-Sagapolutele, the superstar left-handed freshman quarterback at Cal. They beat the piss out of him. And they picked him off, I think, 4 or 5 times, and Johnson had a couple of them. There's merit to him being a really good selection here. Plus, he's a little bit older, which is fine. He's 6'1", 195. He's going to have the athleticism to carry downfield. He's got really good ball skills. That's a player that if you don't go corner round 1, even if you take corner round 1, you could go corner again in round 2 and just say, hey, I'm going to fix this. Isaiah Rodgers can't tackle anyways, even though he had the best PFF game of all time. The only 99.9 single game performance in NFL history. But you could take corners twice early and just say, you know what? Let's just fix the problem. And the way the Vikings have really attacked different areas in the Quay-Steele-Fomensa era, 23, what was 24, they attacked edge rusher. And they're just like, hey, we're not going to get these defensive tackles because we swung and missed on Christian Wilkins. So we're just going to fix edge rusher. Last year, we're going to get defensive tackle and interior offensive line. Just fix those positions. This year, I think they're going to do secondary. I think secondary is going to be a massive priority, which is why let's take a look at safeties. Dylan Thieneman is a little too much of a box guy only for me. I don't think he has. Imagine Harrison Smith if Harrison Smith only did box stuff and never did anything else. He really doesn't do a great job. He's kind of a specialist. Doesn't do a great job of dropping into deep zones. And in this defense, you got to be able to be versatile. I don't want Josh Metellus only dropping into deep zones. You want Harrison Smith and him to be able to do a lot of different things and be multiple. You have to still be able to do it at a good level to play those deep zones. And I think Thieneman's going to be a little bit more of a specialist. Whereas Kamari Ramsey, I think, is a guy that you can ask to be that center fielder, to play that Cam Bynum role, to do a lot of the things where you're running a cover one, you're running cover three or quarters, and he's a deep guy. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, he's also a physical presence in the run game too. So that is a player who can be a versatile weapon. Those guys are, if you're going to go safety, I think those would be the route. Deontay Lawson's interesting. I have not gotten a really good look at Lawson yet, but the one thing I like about Lawson is there's a lot of plus athleticism, and especially for his size, I think he weighs a little more than that 228. He's also an older player, so you're going to get a lot of intelligence with him. But I do think some of the vision is a little inconsistent based on kind of live viewings. His teammate, Justin Jefferson. Yes, Justin Jefferson. If he ends up being available, which I don't know if he's going to come out, he's not on here. But, oh, my gosh, I would love Justin Jefferson. That dude just is a missile toward the football. So Jonah Coleman's obviously available here. Lee Hunter, if you want a nose tackle, he was dominant against Oregon, 6'4", 330. He looks shorter because he's so stocky, almost like a Pat Williams build, if you want to envision kind of what he looks like. Really good kind of penetrating type of player. Jadarian Price, I'll get eyes on here soon. But I think kind of looking at the board, I am going to go safety. I really like Kamari Ramsey and what he can do, how he triggers downhill, how he's really comfortable in those deep zones, and how you build this team back up and you get that youth on defense. I think that would be the play, especially because I don't necessarily trust at this point, before going into a super deep dive, about what Deontay Lawson is going to bring you. So we have a corner, we have a safety, and we have 2 picks in the next 20. So how do we handle that? Taking a look at some of the players available, Emmett Johnson's a really interesting running back prospect from Nebraska, 1,451 yards, 12 touchdowns, 5.8 yards per clip on a Nebraska team that honestly wasn't that good this year. That's something to keep an eye on. 5'11", 200, plenty of size. There's some corner backs available. Tight end is an interesting spot too. I did a 7th round mock draft for A to Z Sports where we took Kenyon Sadiq with the idea that TJ Hawkinson will be gone, which I don't think will happen, but it's good to explore scenarios. It's not about trying to be right. It's about exploring. What would this look like if you do this? What would this look like if you do that? And then it'll help as we continue these mock drafts throughout the entire cycle. We'll be able to say, hey, this guy probably goes in this range, so let's plan ahead by doing this instead, so then we can get this guy here, and then at 97, then we're going to get another guy. So these are really good kind of development exercises. We could also look at trades.
So you're not caught making a panic pick.
Exactly. Some teams want to trade. I'm not really going to do trades here. We may do that moving forward. Kind of taking a look. Michael Trigg is a super athlete at tight end, 6'4", 240. Bonkers catch radius, bonkers tracking of the football. There are some red flags there. Some big red flags. I think this is Trigg's third or fourth school since coming into college. And the red flags, to my understanding, are not good. But the player is, if you just keep his head on straight, very good. So I'm sure we'll kind of learn more throughout the process about how impactful those red flags might be. I'm not one to tell you that it's good or a bad thing, and is it worth it or not? I just know that they exist. So kind of looking overall at the scope of what it is, this guy is going to be one you're going to want to watch for, D'Angelo Pons. He is not big, 5'9", 173, but he is that guy that punches way above his weight class. And I love, you guys know when it comes to corners, I love guys who will punch you in the mouth and who aren't afraid and who will attack, and click and close and go forward. I love Quincy Riley, Jarvis Brownlee Jr. Pons fits that same bill. So, and you can go watch back the tape against Jeremiah Smith. They either went to the same high school or they played each other in high school. Pons wasn't afraid of him. He got beat a couple times, but he wasn't afraid, and he was more than happy to embrace the challenge and try to attack that football. So he's a guy to watch out for. Chase Bisanis, if you want another guard, as a sixth guy, and maybe a Will Fries replacement in 2027 if you don't love what his production is. He's somebody. Isaiah World is not good at football. I wouldn't touch him. I think he might end up being undrafted because I just don't think he's very good. But overall, this board kind of sets up not great for what the Vikings' needs are. I do think like Emmett Johnson, if you want a running back, depending on what happens there in Jones, I think that's a really interesting option. But I'm going to be honest. I want corners. I want corners who are going to be, and I want versatile players. And Pons, to me, is a guy who can be a star, which is a college version of like a nickel and like a safety, do a bunch of hybrid-y kind of stuff and be a little pissant in coverage and punch you in the mouth. So
now, if we lose Flores, do we get one of the two picks this year?
Yeah, you'll get one this year, one next year. So the way the comp picks work is any third round comp picks from players go first, and then the coaches go after. So they'd probably have pick like 103 added on, which that rule would be great. And then you'll get another one next year.
At about the same spot. Yeah.
And another thing, if you lose like an executive who's also a minority, and you lose an executive and a coach in the same year, you get picks in 3 consecutive years, which I find interesting that if you lose 2 in 1 year, you get 1 less pick, but that's just kind of how it goes. So I'm going to take Pons, and we have completely revamped our secondary going into the this comp pick in round 3. So a lot of some of the same players. I really like Tyree Sapp. Obviously, I'm a Florida fan. I watched a lot of him. Brian Parker is a tackle, but he's probably a center convert. So if you wanted to take a guy you maybe develop at center, this might be a spot to take him. Like he's 6'5", 305, but Blake Brandel's playing center at 6'7". I think, especially after how Juergens played on Sunday, that the Vikings might go in with Brandel and Juergens and let him duke it out. Is that the right call? I don't know. But I think if Brandel had an offseason to just try and perfect snapping, I think he's more than capable as a starter long-term. But that's the key. We talked about it with McCarthy. You can't spray the ball when you're throwing a quarterback. You can't spray it at center either because so much of this offense is based in timing. And if you knock timing off by a quarter of a second or half a second, he could screw everything up and completely botch a play. That's why snapping really makes a difference. But then do you want to bring in a guy who's never really snapped before to be your center? That might not be the best case scenario either, which is what a guy like Parker would bring you.
But is Parker a dominant blocker? That's what I care about in a center. He'll learn to snap, but can he dominate the offensive line like we did not see Juergens do on Sunday?
I'm going to be honest, I haven't watched him, so I don't know. Okay. But I will get to him. I just know that a lot of people are talking about him being in center convert. Will Lee is going to be an interesting corner. He's like 6'1", 200 pounds.
He's got a lot of length. We're not going to take another corner here. I'm not stupid. But that's another one. Zachariah Branch is going to be a player that a lot of people talk about at wide receiver. I'm just going to say this. The only time he gets the ball for Georgia is gimmicked plays. Like 52 of his 91 targets were behind the line of scrimmage. He doesn't do NFL stuff. He's a gadget guy. But when he's got the ball in his hands, he's really good. So how valuable is that? That's going to be the difficult part with his evaluation. I don't know. I'll have to look at him a little bit more. I love Nicholas Singleton. He had a bad year this year, but 4.4 yards per carry after 6.4 last year. It was just a rough year for him. I don't really have a good way to kind of describe it otherwise, but if he would have come out after last year, there's a chance he was a fringe first round pick. He's got juice. He's got really good size. He's 6 foot 224, and he just runs like a gazelle. He will eat up yards really easily down the field. Kind of taking a look at everything. I like Skylar Gill-Howard. Interior defensive lineman, more of a penetrator, 6'1", 290. And before he got hurt in this Arizona State game, he was putting up some big numbers. He only had like the 7 pressures, but he was not rushing the passer much, and they were doing a lot of rotational stuff. And a lot of what these interior guys were doing was springing David Bailey and Romello Height for massive pressure numbers and massive sacks, and it was working. So they used them in kind of that role instead of just trying to isolate one-on-one. And I think that role would actually help him with the Vikings because you're going to want to spring Greenard, Van Ginkel, and Turner for those really explosive sack plays. And this is a really good kind of pick to make at 97, because at 97, there's not going to be this heavy expectation that you're going to be anything more than a rotational guy early. But you're probably not going to have Javon Hargrave. You have Levi Drake Rodriguez. You have Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. Now you have another guy who you can just develop and rotate in, and he can be a talented player for you. You got to get youth on the interior of that defensive line. I'd love it in round 1, but that doesn't always happen when the board falls, because there's only 2 guys worthy of a round 1 pick. They both went off the board before the Vikings picked at 18. So Skylar Gill-Howard, that's also just a fun name to say. We'll make him the pick at 97. We got 5 more picks to go, and we'll kind of make this a little faster. This is an interesting spot for tight end. You can already see a couple guys. Lawson Lucky, super athlete, but he did like almost nothing production-wise at Georgia because it's Georgia. But the run blocking, he was pretty solid. 6'4", 240. If you want kind of like, I'm not going to call him Brock Bowers. Nobody's Brock Bowers, but they kind of did some of the similar things as far as play style with him. One guy I really love, Tanner Koziol, a great receiving tight end. 94 targets, 74 catches, 727 yards. And he was dominant last year at Ball State and then came over to Houston. So if you wanted a tight end, this would probably be the guy. Takario Davis is a really fun cornerback. A lot of fun cornerbacks in this class. You're going to find that. So you don't go with your second cornerback early. You can probably get one later and feel good about it. But I think tight end is probably the spot to hit here. And I like Koziol. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I should probably look up the pronunciation. But you get your tight end and you get a hyper receiver. And you can kind of develop the blocking aspect, especially because Josh Oliver is going to remain the number 2 even if Hawk gets hurt. And then all of a sudden, Koziol can come in and he can be that guy. Delp, as Biggs says, is a really interesting option as well. Those players don't get a lot of, what do you call it, production at Georgia because it's the Georgia offense, and that Georgia offense sucks. It's awful. Don't watch the Georgia offense. Here, round 6, not a ton of guys. I'm gonna be real with you guys. It's a bad draft class. Parker Brailsford at center. This would be a guy that I would want to take later. He's a little smaller, 6'2", 290. When he helped lead Washington to the national championship game, he was playing at like 275. So he's grown about 15 pounds of muscle in that time, and he's got a lot of big game experience. So when you're taking a guy, intelligence matters at this spot, and you hope you can kind of develop some of the other aspects of his game. So being that he has that kind of experience,
I like it for a round 6 center. Plus, the Vikings have had some pretty good luck in round 6 at center. Matt Burke, John Sullivan, they've had some luck late in the draft. So
yeah, back in the Stone Age.
I know, right? All right, we got 3 7th round picks, and we'll kind of speed through them. A lot of quarterbacks here, and that's going to kind of, as we get a little deeper into the draft class, that's going to kind of level out. We're not going to see as many. This guy, Eli Heidenreich. Dave, he's a Navy boy. 6 foot, 206 pounds. I want you to look at these receiving numbers. 51 catches for 941 yards through the air. This dude is a true utility player. They used him as a legit slot receiver. They used him as a running back. They used him as a wing back. They used him as a fullback. It's Navy. They do all kinds of things with him. And this is, even if you don't use him a lot on offense, elite special teamer. And we think too much when it comes to the NFL draft that you only want to draft upside, but you got to draft core special teamers too. And I think Heidenreich would be a perfect addition for that fact. So Eli Heidenreich, the Navy boy, at 234. Want to answer that. Freddie asked, if we miraculously trade up, who are we taking? I think it'd be somebody like Sonny Styles or maybe Jermod McCoy. But I haven't watched enough to really get a sense of who I think the Vikings would really want to target, because who is really good versus who they might target sometimes are two different things. So let's take a look at our picks so far. We don't have a running back. We did just kind of take a running back, so we don't need to worry there. We got 2
just
corners.
Like the lieutenants we took.
We got 2 corners, of safety, a defensive tackle, center, tight end, and fullback. So let's take a look to see if there are any decent linebackers available. Not really. Not really. It's like, this isn't a very good class. I actually think this might be a decent spot to take a quarterback. So let's kind of look at some of the quarterback options. Altmaier, more of a cerebral. He feels like if he's going to be in the NFL, he's never going to start. He's only going to be a backup, kind of like a Chase Daniel. Retzlaff had some ability. Baron Morton had a really poor college football playoff, but he was getting some mid-round grades going into the year. A really cerebral, can just operate in offense kind of guy. If you're going to want to go upside, it's Maverick McIver from Western Kentucky. He played at Abilene Christian and nearly upset Texas Tech last year. Only got in 8 games because he got hurt. And Western Kentucky, for some reason, ran the ball a lot this year. I don't know why, but he's kind of got that fun ability, kind of like Bailey Zappi, but I think he's got a little bit more juice in the arm. And I love Bailey Zappi. Just a very cerebral type approach. Yeah, but honestly, these quarterbacks kind of bad. They stink. But if you're going to take one, the idea being, hey, I want to have somebody to kind of grow. I think Morton probably makes the most sense because of everything that he brings you. And you're probably drafting a backup long-term. And I think he's the kind of guy who can be a backup long-term. So
this is the way SKOL asks, what does cerebral QB mean?
So think of like backup quarterback, really intelligent, but doesn't necessarily have all the tools to be like, this is kind of how I think of it. Maybe other people think of it differently, but like a Sean Mannion had everything, but he couldn't actually play football. He was so smart. He had a good arm. He could coach. And that's one of the reasons why the Packers quarterbacks have been doing so well, is because Mannion is now in Green Bay. But he just has everything, but he just stinks when he plays. That's I guess that's kind of the vibe. But I like what Morton can do, and he's a long-term backup, which is completely fine. If you get that in round 7, that rules. Anthony mentioned take a wide receiver, so I take a look at some of the wide receivers here. This is a bad draft class. Like, this is a really rough group. But I do want to highlight one guy, and I think we'll end up taking him, is Jalen Walthall. Incarnate Word. If you've never heard of Incarnate Word, that's okay. They've only been a Division I program for about 15 years. But Cam Ward came from Incarnate Word. And they've had some really good players. The all-time one of the all-time games that I've ever seen in college football was Incarnate Word Sacramento State. Real ones know in the FCS playoffs a couple years ago, staying up to like 2:30 watching that game. That was the Cam Scadaboo game. That was when I found out who Cam Scadaboo was to that 2022 game. Just absolutely bonkers performance. 74-66 final score, by the way. High recommend you watch that on YouTube if you're bored. But Waldhall, that has really good production, and he's going to be like a core special teamer. And that's a big
defensive game.
Oh, terrible defensive game. But it's one of the best games I've ever watched. Sometimes you just have those happen. But yeah, we'll take Waldhall here because I think he's got enough of a profile to potentially be successful as a wide receiver, as a depth guy. Plus, you have the special teams utility. Take a look at the draft grades and ignore the trades because the trades were only there to get the proper picks. We got a B. Not too shabby.
Screenshot that for me. Send it to me.
Oh, I will. And that is the mock draft. We're gonna do a lot more of these. These are fun. We'll have more of kind of down the line. We'll get more audience participation with these. Wanted to kind of go through it first time around because there's a lot of different things here, and I think this Vikings team could take a lot of different paths to find this draft class. We took 3 defensive backs to start the draft. That probably won't end up happening, but I think it's good to, hey, you're going to have holes, and now you have young guys, and now you've kind of quote unquote fixed the problem. But I mean, if they only take 1 secondary player in the first 4 picks, I don't think it's a disaster, especially because you'll be able to address other positions. The big thing, no matter what you do in the draft, maybe it's Jeremiah Love at 18. No matter what you do, it's all going to come down to JJ McCarthy anyways. He's got to figure it out. But you got to try and help the team as best you can. And the best way to do it is by making good quality selections, not overreaching, not taking, what do you call it? Not taking players specifically, hey, I need to take a need player. You also want to give value. There's a delicate balance. And one thing to remember is when it comes to like the consensus board, it's, this is just players in a vacuum. But teams will actually build their draft boards based on need. So we're going to have a lot of fun with this. We're going to talk about
they
it.
do both. They have their needs, they build, and they also build who's the best.
Well, oftentimes their full grade has the need already baked in.
Baked in, yes.
And that can influence, like, if you have Patrick Mahomes and you're drafting, like if they're drafting top 10 this year, like they are, if Fernando Mendoza's there, if he's at the top of your board, they're not going to take him. Pat Mahomes is another decade. But if you have superstar wide receiver where the Vikings had Chris Carter and Jake Reed, you can take Randy Moss. That's why I don't think the Vikings will take a wide receiver, but I don't think it's out of the question that they take a wide receiver. Anything is possible.
Yeah, especially if they trade Addison or Naylor goes off to someplace else. And it all depends on who's on the staff advising as well. Because we could lose Brian Flores, we could lose Wes Phillips, we could lose, 3/4 of the staff. It could all change.
Yeah. A couple comments I want to address before we go. This is the way SKOL says, Tyler, I don't disagree with your evaluation of the players because, again, I don't watch college football, but I disagree with the positions. Maybe positions are lacking, but again, fix trenches first. What are we fixing? The offensive line is good. You just have center. But the offensive line only allowed 28 sacks this year per PFF. And I think that tracks because the quarterbacks were credited being responsible for 30 sacks because of their bozoness. I think if you are Donovan Jackson was really good for a rookie. He's going to take a step next year. Darrisaw is going to be healthy. Brian O'Neill's going to be healthy. If Will Fries is just
average, you're fine. You may want to replace him long term because you're paying a lot for him.
But
the
I
only
expect
spot you really
him
have
to step up next year too.
Yeah. The only spot you have to improve is center. And you're not taking a center in round 1, especially in this class. There is no capable center round 1. The only guy who maybe could have been that was Connor Liu, and he tore his ACL. And you're not taking a guy with an ACL tear round 1 like that. On defense, maybe a nose tackle, or I'd love to get a 3 technique. I'd love to get Peter Woods or Caleb Banks. But if they're gone, I'm not forcing it. I don't mean to pick on the person kind of mentioning it because it's going to sound like I am, but there's this belief at an overall level that the Vikings have a bad offensive line. And I think it's just PTSD because the offensive line is actually pretty good, but the quarterback reflects the offensive line. And the quarterback play was bad this year. It was at times like historically bad. And that's going to make the offensive line look significantly worse. Whereas really good quarterback play can hide holes on the offensive line. I actually think the offensive line is overall fine. And the backups weren't really that bad. Like Justin Skule had a phenomenal game against Myles Garrett, if we remember that from week 5. Blake Brandel, when he was in there, solid. Michael Juergens, solid. Like, I think we have because we've had such a bad offensive line for years as a collective whole, the fan base is too scarred and just wants elite performers at every spot and never an issue. And I understand that. But I also don't... I think the Vikings have one of the better offensive line groups in the league. And I don't think they really need to improve it. They need to have a consistent player at center, though.
I think what people want is we're seeing a trend coming back in the NFL where it go bigger, stronger. And the place to do that is the offensive line. Now, and you could tell me, yeah, but you got guys that are 6'7" and blah, 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 blah. They want dominant play. I talked about it with Darren during a game last weekend, that I wanted to see Juergens blow somebody off the ball, and I did.
Odie is Borkin. I don't know what he wants. But, yeah, it's...
And Darren said, well, we got Kelly. He's that guy. And, yes, he is that guy when he's not concussed.
Yeah. And even if you just had Blake Brandel at center, it may not be a perfect solution, but he's more than capable to be a starter. And if that is your worst offensive lineman, I think you're fine. I think you're in a good spot. Defensive line, I think they need to get a young defensive tackle in there. But like Javon Hargrave, my big issue with him wasn't that he was bad, is he was used poorly. They thought he could just be a 3-down player all the time, and he got washed out too many times with double teams. Just make him a DPR. Doesn't need a pass rusher. And to me,
I agree,
that was the problem.
But where are you going to get a backup tackle that's going to rank a whole lot better than that?
We're talking two different things here because I'm talking defensive line.
And I'm talking offensive line. He said Skule was 65 out of 80 tackles. That's not good. And I agree.
That's also fine for your backup.
Yeah, but like I said, he's a backup.
Yeah. You don't want that guy playing. But if he plays, he gives you a baseline of success, and you can help him with chips. You can help him with rollouts and waggles. You don't have to just leave him on an island. I think early in the season, they just treated him like Darisaw, and he sucked. But then they made adjustments, and then he leveled off, and he was average. And if you get that from a backup, home run. That's great.
There's not that many good tackles out there.
No, there's not that many good offensive linemen. But the idea of, like, we need to fix the trenches, I don't think there's a lot of fixing. There's youth and there's improvement, but we'll see. Anthony says use Rouse more next year. No, Rouse was, when O'Neal was out, Rouse wasn't active. Rouse is gone next year. I think they have no use for Rouse anymore, and they've decided that he stinks and he's done. So it would shock me if he's on the team next year. Even though I thought he was better than Skule in preseason, that's the way that their actions have shown how they feel.
we'll leave with this. 2 Coke cans. Thoughts on trading down to 29-32. Peter Woods isn't there at 18, selecting Anthony Hill Jr. 29-32. Based on initial viewings, I don't think Anthony Hill Jr. is good at football. I just think he's just a bigger version of Ivan Pace, and I don't want that, especially in round 1. But I'll get deeper into the tape because some of the people that I really respect in this industry kind of agree with that that sentiment. But I'll get to linebackers here maybe next. Maybe my next position group, and I'll watch him. Anthony, I know you're saying it's not Rouse's fault they never played him. They didn't play him because they think he sucks. So that is his fault. Like, it would be one thing if there was just too many guys in front of him, but no, he was like the fourth offensive tackle, and they thought he was bad enough where they didn't want to play him. So, yeah. Okay, so we'll leave on this. A disgusting act says, I don't trust our coaching. Look at Ingram since he left. I have it on good authority that when it comes to Ingram, they knew it would take 3 to 4 years. And they got a little bit impatient, and it's the play style. Some people are going to hate the play style because when he loses bad. When he wins, it's dominant. And that up and down nature, some people just hate because it's offensive line and you need to be a lot more even keel. And there's merit to both sides of the equation. Everybody knows I'm high on Ingram, and I thought, hey, he's fine. You know, he's going to lose some reps, and I thought maybe a change in coaching could help him. But he was still losing somewhat in Houston in the same way. It just wasn't as egregious. Wasn't as often. But he was still losing in the same way. And he would still get bullied by great players. He got absolutely bullied by Chris Jones when they played the Chiefs. So, I wish they wouldn't have got rid of Ingram, but I also get it. But that is our show. Don't forget, everybody, first SKOL search for all members Wednesday morning. Then it will be available to everybody Wednesday night. And we're going to have a lot more of those. I'm going to get more film watched. And look, this is day 1 of the offseason. We are going to have a lot more of this. So like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot more. We'll have like mock draft only episodes. We'll do maybe some live SKOL searches. We're going to do a lot of stuff to break down this offseason. We're going to have preseason primers. We're going to talk about different position groups, different free agents, the salary cap. We're going to talk about it all. And you won't want to miss any of it. Don't forget,
Coaches,
2 All Bloggers.
The whole works.
2 All Bloggers is going to go back to Sundays the week after the Super Bowl.
Yes.
Keep that in your mind. I'm going to drill you with it the next few weeks. Don't want you forgetting.
And Wednesday we'll have, we won't. I believe it's either going to be on Bleachers to Speakers or Frustrated Chicago Sports Fans channel, the NFL, NFC North Roundup Show, Who Will Be King, in which I'm sure you're going to hear Pay preening his feathers about winning the division and hosting the Green Bay Packers. It's a Sunday game, if I remember correctly.
No, that's Saturday night.
Oh, and it's going to be curious to who you root for. I know who I'm rooting for. I wish the field would implode, but hey, got to pick one. So we'll see. And then, but the NFC North is the only division where every team finishes above 500.
Mm-hmm. And the Bears, you'll need to bring this up on Wednesday, Dave. The Bears are the first team since the 2010 Kansas City Chiefs to win their division while having a losing record within the division.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
not a 500 record, a losing record.
A losing record, yes. Good for them.
Yep. SKOL search. Watch it
for a special teams gaff.
I know.
We would have won, and we would have won the division. But anyways.
Yeah. Don't forget to watch SKOL Search on Wednesday. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the mock draft. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings! Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!